we visit a graveyard.
Yeah.
Follow me. Popping out of the ground like corks and literally floating away down Duval Street. Fortunately, the local druggist grabbed some Robitussin. That stopped the coughing. You took the oath. I told you they were going to be terrible. The city cemetery over at Rest Beach did not fare nearly so well. It was scrubbed out of the ground. Coffins were broken apart. Bodies and body parts were scattered all over the island, even up in the trees. Now imagine what that was like. You've had a terrible storm destroy half the buildings on the island. The other half are damaged. You have dozens of dead, hundreds of injured, and on top of that, everybody you've buried in the last 26 years has to be identified and reburied. If you walk away, I won't arrest you. Young man says, officer, I'd love to, but my backpack is in there. It's got my bus ticket, my ID, what little money I have left. Everything I own is in that backpack. The officer says, well, go get it. Young man says, no, sir, take me to jail. Young man says, officer, I'll go to jail before I go back in there. Cop told us he was in a good mood that night. He agreed to retrieve the young man's backpack for him. When he bent over and grabbed hold of it, 2 fingers picked up the corner of his shirt, stood him up straight, and then walked him all the way to the gate. And that for the next 5 years, as a police officer in the city of Key West, if he had to come down Eaton Street, he called for backup. Here, he comes up to her completely different. Very quiet, very intense, and says, you have to turn your lantern off. Aaron says, excuse me? He says, you have to turn your lantern off. There are 8 children hiding behind the angel, and they are terrified of the fire. Well, that freaked Aaron out, because she knows the story that I know, that I'm going to tell you next. Now, what I want to do is just a quick experiment. I want everybody to stand quietly for about 30 seconds and pay attention to your senses. What you're smelling, what you're feeling, what you're hearing. Then we're going to walk across the street. Coffee?
That was me.
Okay. Yeah, okay. He's got coffee in his hand. Flowers? Okay, we get that on a regular basis. Got a couple of people smelling flowers. Stale cigarette? Okay. What about wood smoke? Anybody get wood smoke? What'd you hear?
I smell popcorn over there.
You did smell popcorn?
Yeah,
okay.
God.
All right, you'll understand why in a minute.
Freaked out.
Okay. No, you'll understand why in a minute. 1955 and 56. The building was built for an entirely different purpose. Anybody want to tell me what it was originally built to be? A church. It was actually the Fifth Baptist Church on the site. The first 4 all burned to the ground. The first one, about 150 years ago, and sets fire to the building and burns it to the ground with her inside. Now, if she'd been in there with the deacon, he'd have probably never been charged with a crime. Not in those days, but it was a children's Bible class. And 17 children died in that fire with her. Now, at that time, the nearest courthouse was 140 miles away in Miami. Basically, whenever anything really bad happened on the island, the posse would grab the perpetrator, take them to the hanging tree, which is still standing inside Captain Tony's and is part of our Bone Island tour. And the perp had until the posse got him to the tree to convince the posse they were innocent. 1, 2, 3!
You're doomed!
If the perp failed, he got hung. Well, that minister was able to get off the island and step or so ahead of that posse. People, the first time they smell burned human flesh, the smell reminds them of popcorn. We get that smell 5 or 6 times a month under that awning. They had them not long after they opened. The actors reported that after the show was over and the audience was gone, they would sometimes hear children crying in the building. Thinking someone had been left behind, they would search, sometimes for hours, and never find anyone. It started happening during the shows. They got the sound of children screaming during the shows, screaming like they were dying. The sound came from backstage. People in the audience would think there was an actor's daycare center back there, and either somebody was murdering children, or if they knew the history, they figured the building was on fire again. You're standing here in the heart of the most expensive part. A half block off Duval in the heart of Old Town. That is one very, very valuable piece of commercial real estate nothing on this island since empty 8 years. At least 4 times that we know of, building permits have gone up. All 4 times, they came back down. In August of 2005, the current building permit went up. January of 2006, a crew went in and worked 1 day. In February, a different crew went in and worked 1 day. Go ahead and pass that around for me. Now,
Freaky Jim Go. Of course, we get those at home, but yeah, dust on the lens, isn't it?
how many of you have seen the movie Child's Play about Chucky the doll? All right, I want to tell you the true story that inspired the movie. The guy that wrote the movie used to live winter here in Key West. This beautiful Victorian mansion across the street, the artist's house. In 1904, it was owned by the Otto family.
This one right here.
They had a little boy named Robert Eugene. And a family, 1, 2, 3! Yep, self-doomage there. Now, they also had a family of servants that we believe were Jamaican or Haitian. We are reasonably certain they practiced voodoo. And we are very certain they were poorly treated by the Ottos. In 1904, the servants decided to return home. Shortly before they were scheduled to leave, the Otto's little boy had a birthday. The servant's little girl made a doll. Robert's about 3.5 foot high. He's stuffed with straw, he's got burlap for skin, leather for a face, black beady eyes. People say he looks like a burn victim or a monkey. He has wire inside, so he's posable. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I have an impressionable 5-year-old, the last thing I want is for him to have a doll with a face like this. Duh. 1, 2, 3. You're doomed. Talks to it constantly. One night at dinner, he announces to the family he no longer wants to be called Robert. That Robert is now the doll's name. He wants to go by his middle name, Eugene or Gene. The family gave him his way. They usually did. Pretty soon, whenever anything bad happens, it's no longer Gene's fault. When the kitchen window got broken with a baseball, Mom asked him what happened. Robert did it. When she asked him where the last of the cookies went out of the cookie jar, Robert ate them. This went on for a while. Finally, the family was able to convince Gene to leave the doll at home when he goes away to study art in college in Europe. That's right, 18-year-old high school graduate. He's walking around the island, 3.5 foot doll under his arm, talking to it constantly and blaming it for everything bad that happens in his life. And Anne's all over the house rearranging, getting things settled the way she wants, decorating, papering. You can't see it from out here. There is a 3rd floor attic room on the back half of the house. Gene's up there hammering and sawing and nailing. Finally, Anne goes up to see what he's working on. He's lowered the ceiling, built a little bed, a little table, 2 little chairs, a little bookcase. And singing nursery. She says, Gene, what are you working on? He says, I just thought Robert would be more comfortable in a space scaled to his size. Now she's thinking, oh my God, he's got an illegitimate child. She wasn't anywhere near that lucky. Gene pulls Robert out of the closet. And by the way, Key West is a great place to come out of the closet. And introduces him as a member of the family. But if I've just moved 2,000 miles, down here for you, to marry somebody, and they pull a doll out of the closet that I'm supposed to treat like family, and the doll has a doll of his own, you see the lion under his arm? Jeez. Right then and there, I'm in the yellow pages under D for divorce attorney. It's safe to touch this one. Anne's an old-fashioned girl. She doesn't believe in divorce.